Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. The Delhi University is going back to a 4-year undergraduate program from a 3-year undergraduate program, or rather from a 4-year to a 3-year undergraduate program. And earlier it went from a 3-year to a 4-year one. Now, obviously, the 4-year one was unusual and had attracted a lot of controversy. But the problem was, or rather the larger issue is, that the university had the autonomy to do it earlier, but it does not seem to have the autonomy to retain it, and therefore is being forced to go back to a 3-year, which raises a slightly larger question that we are trying to address today. What to extent is the or the degree of the autonomy that Indian universities have, or the Indian education system has, and therefore is the command and control structure of education in this country causing serious problems with education, particularly higher education in this case. My co-anchor here, Ayaz Memon at Cricketwala, also joining us, two gentlemen, Neeraj Hatekar, Dr. Neeraj Hatekar, professor at Bombay University, who was in the news earlier for speaking out on some of the problems being faced by Bombay University. We'll try and understand whether there's a link between some of the issues that he raised and with the larger issue of autonomy. Parth Shah from the Center for Civil Society in Delhi. Parth Shah has been studying the larger issues in education and also advocating causes within education from his organization. Ayaz?
Yeah, so Govind, I think you actually said it all, but just to kind of address the issues. One is that how does any decision affect students? Fundamentally, this whole thing is about whether the students benefit or not. The other is, of course, whether the university is done right or not. And the third, most crucial, is should the government at all be exercising any control? And if so, how much? I think these are the fundamental
and it
issues.
seems pretty traumatic because you're talking about thousands of students going from a 3-year course to a 4-year course, and therefore all the effort gone into design that 4-year course, and now being pushed back to a 3-year course, whether they like it or not.
Absolutely, it's going around in in circles.
Right. Okay, I'll come to you, Dr. Hatekar, in a moment, but Parth, can you give us a sense on how you are looking at this issue? Walk us through what you think are the key problems and challenges raised in the way this issue has been handled.
I think there are two key issues, right? One is the process through which the decision has been made, either to allow 4-year course or now to disallow it. I think the process itself is a big concern. And secondly, I think maybe a subsidiary question is about the pros and cons of the 4-year degree that DU has put into place. I think first part is far more important from system point of view. And that's where I think the autonomy of university and colleges are completely being undermined. And as I understand it, the UGC does not on paper have control over such policies. On paper, universities are free to decide the course structures and curriculum and all of that through internal mechanisms of governance they have. But I think what is happening in the UGC obviously is the grant-making organization. And so fear that if you don't toe the UGC line, your funding would then be jeopardized. And that is the fear that I think forcing colleges and universities to then go out of their way and actually undermine their own autonomy, which is given by law, and accept UGC's dictum. I think that raises a larger issue in terms of the financing of higher education and the way it is being done here in India. Right? I think there are different ways of thinking about how to change the financing, but I think one simple way to think about it is to make sure that those who can afford to pay should be paying much higher fees than what they currently pay. So instead of subsidizing everyone who goes to St. Stephen's or Xavier's College, those who can afford to pay, they should be able to charge a full fee and cover the cost from them. Right. Those who cannot can be given a scholarship or subsidized loans to cover their cost. I think the model that we have followed so far overall in higher education, that there's a across the board subsidy for everyone who goes to college, right? Which results in a very bizarre situation. A student who until class 12, say in an international school, was paying 4 to 5 lakhs a year suddenly pays 5,000 a year the moment he joins a college. Right? It's hard to argue the parents lost capacity to pay when students left class 12 and joined the first year in college.
Right.
So I think that's universal subsidy itself is a big challenge, and that needs to be thought through in terms of larger issues of financing higher education.
But we'll come to the financing in a moment. But if we were to take a step back, right, what is the more fundamental question we're asking here? I mean, because we're finally trying to find out and then perhaps ensure in some ways that a government does not play a predominant role in deciding a school or college level curriculum and structures and so on, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I think not just school and college. I mean, school also, right? So we do have the same kind of mindset even in school education, where the textbooks are written by the government, and every change in government then brings about the same old debate about either congressization of textbooks or saffronization of textbooks. And it happens every change in government. So I think we need to look at the autonomy and give genuine autonomy to institutions of learning, whether they are schools or colleges. And that is a larger issue in terms of the mindset change. That these are not political institutions to be sort of football around. And that, of course, there's a large number of issues in terms of why is the president a chancellor of the universities by default, right? So I think you can start with a lot of small issues, but I think all of them together create this larger mindset that government, in a sense, is in charge of running and deciding what should happen.
Right. Dr. Hatekar, do tell us how you see this issue. I mean, you're someone who obviously were in the news for raising issues to do with the quality of education and the quality of Bombay University standing. I mean, you had pointed out, if you were quoted accurately, that the rank of Bombay University had come down from 96 to 150 in that time span that you were referring to. So these are fundamental issues to do with quality. How much of this is linked to the way the university in your university functions and the autonomy that it gets?
In principle, universities are autonomous. In principle, they are governed by, in Maharashtra, they are governed by Maharashtra Universities Act, and there are various autonomous bodies of the university which are supposed to run the university. Okay, so in principle, they are indeed autonomous. The state government has certain powers because the state government ultimately provides the salaries. So it rightly has certain powers. But what happens in principle is universities are hardly ever autonomous, because everyone, right from the vice chancellor to the pro vice chancellor to the BCD director and members of various bodies, are either appointed directly by politicians or have some very strong political connections. And therefore, there is really nothing much that a university body can do independently of how the education minister wants it to be done, or people in important political powers to see it. And therefore, the bodies like the Senate, for example, of the university, or the academic councils of the university, which are supposed to decide things, or the board of studies, which are supposed to decide curricula, course of studies, etc., hardly ever get that freedom, because those things, for example, in the syllabus of the Mumbai University, Rohinton Mistri's book, which was a part of the syllabus of the English of the master's program in English, was removed overnight because one politician felt it was derogatory to their party, and he met the vice chancellor, and the vice chancellor obliged him. So those kinds of powers are really undermining, in spite of the constitutional provisions that we have.
Right. Okay. But so what, as Professor Hatekar points out, this is a fundamental issue, and I think he's referring to the political interference, and obviously a political interference which seems to manifest itself in rapid changes in curriculum, or maybe appointments and so on. So first of all, is there something that can be addressed in some ways? Because if on paper they're autonomous, then how do you keep people at bay? Secondly, is there another sort of more fundamental problem why politicians or people in politics tend to interfere, and can they be kept at bay?
I think, as was pointed out earlier, largely the reason is the fact that they are financing it. And I think it's always sort of going to be the case that those who finance would have some control over what you can do. So I think there are two. I think one, of course, is the appointment should be completely internal. So why do we need to have somebody from outside being appointed as a vice chancellor or a pro vice chancellor, right? So why isn't it possible to create a structure within universities and colleges where they themselves select who are the leaders of the college? I think that requires very different mindset change, and that's something that we need to strive for. So that's, I think, one part
come about is my question. How will that mindset change come about is my question.
I think one is that for some of the state governments to be able to, I think, be more progressive in this issue and show examples where this can be delivered. Right. I think it cannot be done in a one go across the whole country. You would have to start in some places. IIT and IIMs, for example, try to achieve something similar for themselves. Right, and one of the reasons why they increase their fees is to become more independent of the government finances. So I think even IITs had faced a huge trouble in achieving this goal. And I think that's an effort that needs to be made on a constant basis. And as Professor pointed out, faculty members in our better universities are the, I think, key force to drive this change.
So can I just, I mean, let's look at the flip side. Let's play the devil's advocate here. Suppose there is no consistency. So every university can decide on its own tenure, on its own curriculum, and you might have a very haphazard kind of a plan which emerges when you look at the entire country. Is that, for instance, 4-year course, 3-year degree course, somebody might say 5 years. I mean, is there a need for consistency, or is that really not the issue?
No, I think, see, I know that when things are controlled and you free them up, there's a fear that chaos will prevail. Right? My sense is that things do work out, and you see in other parts of our life. For example, no, there is no law that says that every laptop should have 2 USB ports, but whatever laptop that you find in the market does have a USB port, right? I think somehow the people figure out what's really required. So I think today there is no link between what students want, what parents want, what the market demands, and what the university delivers, because its financing is completely mismatched. Once the campus becomes dependent on serving the student, and student becomes really a customer, then I think it would not be able to do this kind of arbitrary changes that you see in the current system. You really have to convince large body of students that the 4-year course is better for you than a 3-year course that we have been giving you so far, because they don't have to be there, unlike today, right? So today I think there's a lot more autocratic decision making within campus and of course outside within the government, largely because the students are completely irrelevant to the debate. As you pointed out earlier, tens of thousands of students' future is at stake, and nobody actually worries about them at all. It's a battle fought between the administration and the government.
So that's an important point, Govind. I think Professor Hatekar might be able to tell us a little more, because he was in a situation where actually the students were all supporting him. They attended class outside the campus when he was, kind of not allowed to teach in the university. So, Professor Hatekar, is there a strong disconnect between what the students actually want and the administration? Because are they living on different planets? What's your experience?
Well, in a sense, yes. You see, because the problem of the majority of Indian universities is the complete stagnation that has occurred in syllabi, the methods of teaching, etc., and primarily because of the kind of political interferences and a complete lack of sensitivity to student needs that has crept into various bodies of the statutory bodies of the universities. Now, currently, for example, the whole world is, I'm a teacher of economics, but I still need to know sociology, psychology. Currently, there are no divisions like that. The knowledge world has become far more interdisciplinary. But the way our universities are organized, the way our departments are organized, the way the rules are organized, do not, contribute to this compartmentalization of knowledge and really limit our new knowledge creation. But within the university systems, nobody has that incentive to alter these systems because universities are, in that sense, not really answerable to anybody, because they are autonomous, and as long as the powers that be satisfy their political bosses right at top, nobody really questions them. So in that sense, really, I think this disconnect between what students are getting and what they think they should get, if this can be translated into general unrest among students, which then forces the powers that be to be more sensitive I see that as the only solution. I do not see a complete deregulation of the university system as a solution, because wherever that has happened, we have not really worked, the things have not worked very well. For example, the UGC, specifies the minimum competencies of a teacher, the minimum salaries that should be paid to teachers. In the large number of self-financing colleges and departments that have come out in states like Maharashtra, teachers are paid a pittance. Teachers are paid 6,000 rupees, 12,000 rupees. Those kinds of salaries teachers are getting, and you can imagine what kind of quality that gets in. Students are enrolled for engineering degrees, various sorts of degrees. They're given degrees are churned out, but students find themselves unemployable. So there has to be some regulation, but I think this regulation has to be done in a way which is very sensitive to the kind of needs of the knowledge society today that we need to give to students.
Parth, we obviously have colleges or universities which are self-financing and truly autonomous. Are we seeing a difference in the way they are being run and the results and outcomes they're achieving versus the ones that are not?
I have not seen any study, frankly, that does this comparison in a systemic manner. So I don't really have much sort of fact to depend on in answering your question.
Right.
One thing I think we do know about the autonomous colleges that have started or have is that they're offering a far more nuanced and better suited courses. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you look at, for example, what Amity offers is a private university, and what, for example, Xavier's College in Bombay offers now as autonomous college, right, are courses which are in better demand, courses that students actually want to study. And so I think there's a better match in terms of supply and demand. Now, I have no way of judging the quality of these courses, so I cannot say that they are better or worse.
In fact, I'm familiar with some of them in the Xavier's context in Mumbai, and I can agree that some of those courses, like let's say public policy, for instance, a degree course, is something that you may not find elsewhere, and is a recent innovation.
That's right. Yes, the public policy is a very good example of what Xavier's College offers. Right, NIIT, for example, which is the other private university in Delhi or near Delhi, has a very similar program where they actually have now tied up with industry for part-time work and placement while students are studying on the campus. So I think all of those innovations which are more suitable to the demands of parents, students, and the market are happening in the autonomous colleges and private colleges. So at least that part of our market process does seem to work. Quality remains an issue, and I think that's something we need to see and have a more detailed study in terms of how good or worse they are in delivering quality in these new courses.
A couple of comments coming in. I think we've addressed some of these questions already. The first one is political interference degrading the quality of education? The second one, also from Sesha, says, don't you think all this is making our education system weaker than what it is? Professor Hatekar, do you want to respond to that?
Political interference, unwanted political interference. I can understand the state government is run by politicians, political parties, they fund the universities, and therefore they rightly would have some say in running of a university. So if an education minister thinks genuinely that there are better ways of running a university, there should be no problem in conveying that to vice chancellors or getting them to run the system like that. The problem happens when political interference happens at the point of, for example, giving affiliation to colleges which do not satisfy minimum criteria. For example, in Maharashtra itself, currently we're looking at 25 engineering colleges which are run by politicians, which the AICTE has said should be closed down because they don't have basic facilities. But universities in Maharashtra have been giving them affiliations a year in and year out to continue their degree courses in spite of them not having teachers, not having infrastructure, not having buildings, so on and so forth. The education minister of Maharashtra runs a college in Mumbai in one residential building, which gets affiliation every year. So it is that kind of interference which is obviously a serious problem. And that kind of interference is undermining the autonomy of the universities. Universities ought to be autonomous, but we need to protect them from these kinds of. I think that is the crucial problem in governance of higher education. How do you really achieve that balance? You need to get money from the state government. You can't be an entirely self-financing university, because there are self-financing universities, private universities, they are small. Today in Mumbai University, I am looking at 600,000, more than 600,000, 700,000 students over 4 districts of Maharashtra, which come from varied backgrounds. I can't really make make it that kind of a large system, a self-financing private kind of a system. It has to be supported by the state government. There will have to be funds coming from the state government, at least in the near future. And we need to therefore understand how, we need to really strengthen the way our internal bodies of the university work, and the selection of vice chancellors have to be clearly apolitical. If we can achieve that, we'll get some handle.
I think Ayaz has a point, but before that, let me just take in one more comment that's come in. It says the discussion is almost a subset of one you had on unemployed, educated youth. Political interference has ensured a dismal state of affairs. Poorly educated youth who are unemployable because politicians removed from reality are making decisions. Ayaz?
So I think there are two aspects to it, Govind, and I would want Professor Hatekar or Parth to respond to this, where the political interference is concerned. One is, of course, the monetary exploitation or financial exploitation of education. The other is infiltration into the way the education is spread across the country, and which could be more, insidious, so to speak. Now,
or it may not even be insidious. It's pretty overt.
It may be very overt.
Yeah.
The problem is that if you have freedom given to all the universities, I'm just trying to play a devil's advocate again here, it might end up with a free-for-all where the curriculum is concerned. Is that a danger? Is that a threat, or is that acceptable?
Parth, do you want to go first?
I think one way to look at that is look at other countries which do allow this kind of freedom, where there is no national body that regulates what's being taught and how it's being taught, right? So there are several countries I can name, and of course we all know them. And there's no chaos being created because one college teaches subject differently than the other, or has a different focus than the other. I think there's a fear of chaos is always there when you remove centralized control. And I agree that there is no scientific way to prove that nothing will go wrong. Things can go wrong, right? But I think overall, my sense is the benefits would far outweigh whatever small cost we would have to pay. So in the long run, if not immediately, we need to move in that direction. And I think we need to take small steps to get there. It would not be one giant leap probably, but I think slowly we could find ways of getting there. And part of that is what was discussed earlier in terms of financing. We all agree that financing is the sort of indirect route of control by politicians in terms of getting approvals and affiliations. And of course, what happened in the EU, happening in the EU today. So I think I'm not saying that they become self-financing, all of them, but my point was that the government should not fund institutions, which brings the government control. They should fund the students. Right. So I would say fund students, not colleges. So it is because they fund directly the colleges and salaries of professors that they have this kind of overarching control over the running of the college.
Right.
If the funding does come, of course, public funding does come to the college, but through the students, then I think that kind of control would partly, large chunk of that would go away.
Right. Professor Hatekar, we're running out of time. So, to come back to the question that we started with, we said that is the command and control structure currently that's being practiced, even though it may not be on paper, causing serious harm to our universities and thus our education system. How would you like to respond to that?
Yes, surely. I will look at it at two levels. One is I don't really foresee the financial dependence of universities or colleges on the state coming to an end, because we need many more universities, we need many more colleges. We have lots of young people who need to be going to colleges and universities, and they need to run courses even like physics or philosophy or Sanskrit, for which private universities are not going to set up courses to teach. Okay, so these will have to be funded by the state. They'll have to be financial dependence. The point is that there already exists legislation which ensures that universities are independent and autonomous. Let us implement that legislation properly. Let us preserve the autonomy of existing universities, existing university departments. From within universities itself, we need to be able to fight this political interference. If we can fight that, then I think it's not really because, so if we can fight that, then we'll have some future. As of now, different universities are offering different courses. It's not as if the university education all over the country is identical. You mentioned autonomous colleges. Autonomous colleges are not offering new courses because they're autonomous. They were made autonomous, they were given autonomy after it was ensured that they had the capacity to do that. Xavier's College is already a reputed college. You see, autonomy gives it some freedom. So that kind of a slow giving autonomy to colleges, universities, departments within universities is happening across the country, but it's happening very slowly. By and large, I think given the current setup, we can fight this politicization if we strengthen the existing institutions within universities.
Right. Okay. Parth, your last response, I mean, or last comment on the question that we started with. Is this command and control structure creating a crisis of sorts in our university and thus our education system? Also, maybe if you want to quickly respond to what Professor said about the need for state-run, state-funded colleges, because there are some courses, there's some forms of education which can only be or best be state-funded.
I think let me start there. I did not say, if you heard more precisely, that we want all colleges to be supported by fees. My point was, how does the state support come to the college?
Right.
Today, it comes directly to the college, and therefore it brings all the strings along with it. If the funding came through the students who go to the same colleges, the same courses that are being currently offered, then the strings would be far fewer. And those will be easier to resist and fight against than what we have to fight if the funding is directly to the college itself. So I think we are not debating in terms of whether there should be any state support for colleges or not.
Sure. Okay,
we are agreeing on that. It's just a method of how it's being done. I think largely centralized command and control has never worked in any area of life, and particularly in education, which ultimately is a very individualized, personalized service, if you want to think of that way, where you need to figure out how to provide education and learning to a student who is unique in many ways, right, in the same classroom. And I think that requires far more individualization, customization of what institutions do. So in that area particularly, command and control is completely out of place. And I think that's sort of no-brainer in a way. I mean, everybody who thinks about this should understand very clearly this is a path to disaster, just like it was in many other parts of our life that we had earlier.
Right. Thanks, Parth. Thanks, Professor Hatekar. Ayaz, last word.
Well, I think, just going by the experience of what has happened with Delhi University, I think there is a need for this problem to be actually examined in its totality and, addressed accordingly. I think we've had some very good, valuable inputs here, Govind. But clearly, the interest of the students and the independent functioning of the university should be paramount.
Right. Interest of students and independent functioning of university should be paramount, not just on paper, but in reality, as Professor Hatekar just pointed out. Thank you very much for joining us on the India Hangout. We're going to be back soon. Thanks for watching.